Hello and welcome. My name is Leah Kaki and I'm a 3D motion design freelancer. This is my 3D modeling podcast, Ambient 3D Animations, and today we are going to add a blanket and a pillow to our couch that we 3D modeled last time. So let's go ahead and take a look at where we're at. This was a quick example I put together in order to show the blanket and the pillow we're making. You can see that this pillow is pretty fluffy. I used the hair object in order to make it fluffy, and we're going to talk a little bit about that and just go over some of the basics because there's a lot to know when it comes to the hair object. There's a lot to know when it comes to dynamics, but you don't need to know all of those little details to do something fun like this. So this is a nice introduction. I'm not going through all the settings, but we are going to make a blanket and we are going to make a pillow today. So let's go ahead and get started. You can see over here is the one we had made and its starting point from the last episode. We have this little table here. Just gonna scooch this off to the side and let's get started. The first thing that we'll need is we're going to need a plane, and I used that to create the blanket. And the dimensions I originally used were 60 by 60 inches. So I'll add in that for the width and height, and then for the width and the height segments, I used about 130, I think it was, or it could have been 125, somewhere around there. I'll put in 130 by 130 segments, and that'll get us some nice detail for the blanket when we're using dynamics to create those folds. So we need this plane in order to fold. We need this plane to fall onto the couch so that we can get all those nice folds. And this is actually pretty simple to do in Cinema 4D's newer simulation system. We are going to need a tag in here. So we'll look under our simulation tags and you'll see cloth is over here, and we'll click on that. So it added this cloth tag here, and you can adjust the bendiness. I feel like that one affects how many folds you get to a certain degree, and the amount of friction, how much it sticks to other objects. So if you feel like your blanket is falling off the couch too much when it falls down, you can adjust this friction here. But just out of the box, the default settings work pretty well for this, and it's already pretty well suited for a blanket. So I'm going to move this up a little bit because this is going to fall on the couch, and I find that it helps to angle the blanket a little bit to get some nice folds in it. And the thing about this is that if we don't set up collider tags and we hit play, it's just going to go through the couch. And you can see gravity is working, but it's not detecting the other objects around it. So what do we want this to collide into? We want it to collide into these cushions. So we have another tag we need for that so that Cinema 4D recognizes the other objects as a part of the simulation. I'm going to open up these cushions we made, and I'm going to select all of these. I'm holding Control, that would be Command on a Mac, to select individual ones, and then right-click, Simulation Tags. We're adding in a collider, and it added it to all of the ones I had selected. So now we have all the seat cushions with a collider tag, and that's pretty good. You can see that the collision shape that's being used for this is triangle mesh, and that works fine for right now. So we'll move forward with that. And if you feel like things are bouncing too much in your simulation or bouncing off of the collider too much, you can reduce the bounce, you can increase the bounce if you want things to bounce more. If you want there to be more friction for things to stay in place a little bit more, you can increase the friction. That also slows things down when they're moving. So those are just a couple of the settings to keep in mind. Again, for something simple like a blanket, you don't need to know all of these, so this is a pretty simple start to using these. I'm going to look at the back cushions. Now these are the ones back here. I'm going to click on these. So I'm going to select the back cushion of these, and then I'm going to choose Simulation Tags, Collider. And now let's see what happens. Oh, we also need to add it to this base here so right click, and then we'll go into Simulation Tags, Collider. So now we have it applied to the base, we have it applied to the cushions. Let's hit play and see what happens. So you could see that we have some intersections happening. It is somewhat able to tell where the cushions are. And there's a few things we can do to help resolve this. One thing is that we could also use the subdivision surface for the collider so that we have more polygons, because what's really being used to calculate these are the edges and the vertices. So the subdivision surface has more edges, so that'll actually help us have a more accurate collision. So I'm moving those up to the subdivision surface, and then we can hit play and see what happens. You can see that that's a lot better because we have more subdivisions. Now this is sliding quite a bit. It looks like it might slide off the couch. So the thing that we talked about in the settings earlier that we could also try is we can try increasing the friction. So I'm selecting these cushions once again, and we can increase the friction. Let's try 0.5. So a lot of getting familiar with these settings is being experimental, trying them out, and just getting used to it. It's a little bit like riding a bike. You just need to try it out, and after a while you get a feel for it. So it's sliding a little bit less. It's still sliding. I think that I want to rotate this a little bit more, angle it a little bit more to see if we can get some more interesting folds in here. I find that the more you angle it, the more the folds you get. And I'll also raise it up a little bit so that's falling a little bit further. I'm clicking this button here to use the world coordinate system for a moment, and then I turned it off. But that just makes it easier to move it up vertically, even though it's an angled object. So this is a lot better. Now something else we can try is if you hit Control D or Command D if you're on a Mac, we can go over to our simulation settings, and in here you'll see additional settings in here. If you feel like when your simulations are happening, things are jittering around a little bit and they aren't super smooth, or your simulations don't look as smooth, that's what these smoothing iterations help with. So we could try increasing this a little bit. If you increase the sub steps, you get more accurate collisions. So we could try increasing this to about 50 and see what that does. And you'll see that it changes the movement a little bit. I'm going to hit play. It's a little bit slower, but it's more accurate and usually makes things look a little bit nicer. Or a little bit more detailed. So we are getting some nicer folds. Gonna pause this here for a moment. You can see we have these really nice detailed folds, but when you zoom in, they look a little bit chunky because of the polygons. They don't look super smooth. So what we can do to help fix this, instead of adding more polygons, we can hold a click on here, go over to our cloth surface, and this will subdivide it and help smooth that out. It can even help you add some thickness to the blanket too. So you have subdivisions here. We've talked about subdivision surface modeling. This is very similar to that, but it's specifically designed for cloth. So we can go ahead and drop our blanket into here, and you can see that looks so much smoother, so much nicer. Look at those beautiful folds. And I will name this blanket. And if you want to get an idea of how it looks when the light hits it, sometimes it helps to press play now and see this render. So the thing about me is usually when I'm doing this thing on my own, I'll try having the blanket fall from all different positions and keep messing around with the settings for days. So if you want to do that, you can go ahead and do that. But for me right now, since I don't want to bore all of you with that, I'm just going to stop it where it is and be happy with how it looks. If you want to mess around with it some more, you can. I totally get that. I would usually do that and try a bunch of different ways to have this fall. But let's just say, for instance, I'm really pleased with how this blanket is looking right now, and I want to save it in this position, regardless of anything else that I add or change about the scenes or any other simulations going on, that I just want this to be a polygonal object that's no longer a part of a simulation, that's just saved in its current state. It's just going to be still on the couch without any animation, and we need that for a render. Like the one we're working on right now that we are adding this couch to. This is a part of a larger project. If you want to know about that, you can check out the other episodes. We're actually 3D modeling a whole library. But if you right-click on this cloth object, you'll see this option down here, current state to object. When you click on this, it will make a copy of whatever state that object is in currently, whatever dynamics or anything. It's like it freezes it in that current state. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to hide this other blanket, and you can see that I have a copy of it over here. And if I show the original again, you can now see that there are two of them. And in our copy, we can delete this tag here because this is no longer going to be used as a simulation. We just wanted a nice blanket with some folds in it, basically. So I'm going to put this back into place where it was. I'm actually going to do that by just hitting undo a few times. I'll have to delete this cloth tag again though, and that's fine. And then for this, we can just go ahead and hide this. So I turned off the enable in the basic tab so that that's no longer running any calculations. Even though it's hidden, I just want to make sure that that was fully off because I don't want to deal with that. So the next thing we need for this couch, for it to be super comfy and cozy, is we need it to have a pillow. So I thought we'd make a fuzzy pillow because it's also fun to work with the hair object, and it's a really quick way to make something that looks nice. So let's go ahead and get started with that part. So what we'll do first of all is we'll drop a sphere into our scene. I'm going to make it 8 inches and move it on over here. It actually seems still pretty big. Let's try 6 inches. So this feels pretty good. I'm going to change this to be a hexahedron so that we don't have this pole at the top, because we're going to make this pillow a little bit fluffy. So I'll change it to be hexahedron, and we'll make it editable by hitting the C hotkey. Now, if you feel like getting a little bit creative, you can grab your brushes and deform it a little bit. In the mesh menu, you'll find your brushes here. If you're interested in using one of these, we've covered all of the sculpting brushes in previous episodes, but you can just deform this a little bit if you'd like to. Make it look a little bit more organic and soft. So I'll do a little bit of this, but I won't go too crazy. So there's our pillow there, slightly deformed. And we want to have fur coming off of this. And remember to save frequently while using the hair object in here, because things can crash, especially when you are rendering. So just hit save often, or make many copies of the file. Put on autosave in your settings. Do what you need to do to save yourself. And we'll find the hair object in the simulate menu. So I have the sphere selected, and we're going to make this fuzzy. Under the hair objects, you'll see there's a fur object, there's a feathers object, and there's a hair object. Now, interestingly, the add hair will work better than the fur for Redshift. And the reason for that is that the add hair object is a little bit newer, and it has more options, and it just got more updates. So it works better with Redshift. So we are going to click on the add hair, and you'll see these blue things coming out. Now these blue lines represent something called guides. They aren't the actual hairs on your object. They are guides for the hair on your object. So that's one of the things that you'll first notice, is that you'll see these guides show up in your scene. The next important thing you'll need to notice in our scene after we do that is we get this tag here. With a lot of different options, you have your hair color, you can affect the specular, you can affect the thickness, and all different settings in here, and this will help control how the hair looks. You can also adjust the hair length. If you click on here, you can adjust the length. Right now, this hair is way too long. The guides can help you visualize where the hair will be just a little bit, or at least what direction it's going in its length. So we can reduce this to something like 2 for now. And this is a pretty good start. I'm going to hit save so that if this crashes, we're okay. And you can adjust the number of segments. So that's if you start having the hair bend, this many segments will affect that curve and how smooth that is. So the more segments, the slower the render time, the slower the simulations are, but the nicer the hair will look in terms of how you can bend it. In this case, we aren't getting into hair dynamics. This pillow isn't moving. It isn't a running character that needs its hair flowing in the wind or anything like that. So I'm going to turn off this in our dynamics tab. So the hair object is just going to be used today to make this look nice. Really simple, going over some of the basics. Another thing that happens when you add in this hair object here is if you click on your render settings, this is really, really, really important for you to notice, is that we got hair render and it's checked on. If you were to copy and paste this sphere with the hair object, actually I'll show what happens if we do now. I'm copying these and pasting it into an empty scene, and it will not render if you don't have that in here. I need to add in a light for this to look better, but you can see that there is no hair rendering. And if you go into hair and add as an effect hair render, refresh this, it'll have hair. So if you're wondering why this isn't rendering when you copy and paste this pillow into another scene, that's probably why. So just make sure this is turned on and add that in there. I'm going to turn off the IPR and go back in here. So you can see that's rendering, but it doesn't really have a redshift material applied to it. So if we want to have this look really, really nice, which we do, we'll need to create a redshift tag, a redshift material. So we'll go under create materials, and what we want is the principled hair. Now the redshift principled hair, if we click on it and open it up, it is actually grabbing attributes from this tag over here, the hair material expression. It's grabbing attributes from that. That's what this node is representing. And it's pulling it into this redshift principled hair node to render this. So these are interrelated. So that's a really important thing to notice. And another thing that's important to know is that you can adjust the amount of melanin in the hair and the melanin redness. Now, these are good for if you're making realistic hair colors, but I'm not interested in making realistic hair colors. So if you don't want a realistic hair color and you want something like, you want it to be blue or pink or platinum blonde or something like that, that doesn't happen in here naturally, you'll need to adjust this albedo mix. So when it's on 0, that's basically telling Cinema 4D this is a natural hair color. If you adjust this to 1, it's saying it's not a natural hair color. And you can control the color through here a little bit more. So something that I'd like to do is change this color. I'm going to make it much lighter. And then this one I'm going to make a little bit purple, just to see how that looks, like a purple gray color. And you can adjust that transition between the two. I'm going to save again, just in case. And you can adjust in here the number of hairs you have. You can also adjust. Now this is risky to render at the same time you're doing this, so you don't have to do this with me because your computer might crash, but I'm going to push mine a little bit because I want to show you how this works with it rendering so that you can visualize it better. But be careful following along with me and rendering at the same time, because you might want to adjust these settings with the render off, and then once you're done adjusting them, render after with the IPR, just so that you aren't pushing your system too far and having your computer crash. But something that I want to show you was this thickness here. So right now it says our root is 1 inch. That's really, really thick for a strand of hair. So it would make more sense for this to be maybe 0.1. And then we could make this one 0.01. And I'll refresh this. And you can see that the hair is much finer than what it was before. Right now it's pretty straight, and there's some things we can adjust in here for that. Something else we can do is adjust the angle shift. And this adjusts how it looks when the light hits it. So I kind of like this look here, how it's a little bit lighter along the edges. So I think I'm going to move ahead with that. Going to hit save again. Can't save too much with the hair object. It likes to crash things. And if you want to get more wavy hair looks and things like that, you can click on this hair material here. That controls the hair expression that's right over here. That's plugged into the redshift principled hair. Those series of nodes we talked about earlier. So if you turn on frizz and increase the frizz percentage, and then you can change the look and the texture of this. You can see it's a lot less straight as you increase that frizz. And you can also adjust how much frizz there is from the start of the hair to the end of the hair by length by adjusting this curve. So that's what this is symbolizing. This is saying there's less frizz at the start, and then there's much more frizz at the end. So that's causing the hair to go different directions. So that looks kind of cool. I actually like that look. And there's a lot of different options in here. You could try something like clump, and it'll clump together sections of the hair. And there you can see my computer just crashed. So I'll restart. So here we are again. Let me see where I last saved. But back to what we were discussing. We were discussing the hair material. It looks like it saved it right before I started adding the frizz and things like that. So that'll be really easy to talk about. So we talked about thickness a little bit. You can make the hair thinner at the end or thicker at the beginning in here. You can once again add in frizz in here. I'll add in 30% frizz. And you'll see this update. There are other options. You can try something like clump, and that helps clump the hair together. Like you can see here. And I kind of like that look. You can try many of these. There's wave and twist, so feel free to experiment with this. This is really an introduction. I feel like we could spend months talking about dynamics and about hair and about how those work together as a system. So this is the goal of this, is just to get you enough knowledge to be able to put a pillow and a blanket on your couch, because I think that those softer details really make an environment look warm and inviting and friendly. If you want to add some more textures to this, like you want to add a texture to the blanket or even add a texture to the pillow underneath the hair, you can do that. I'm going to copy this cotton texture here. We had added that from the library. So you can search for fabric in here. We added this one in the last episode, but you'll see a ton of options here for Redshift. And you can find something that you like, or even build your own fabric texture. I would like to adjust the color of this one to be an off-white, and I'll add that to the blanket. I'm also going to add that to the base of the sphere. I'm going to rename this pillow Fluffy, and I'll name this Faux Fur. So we have everything nicely named. And here is our couch. If you want to get extra creative and fun, you could do something like dropping a book on the table or a mug. I decide to go in here and add in a book. So this pretty much wraps up this episode to make your couch a little bit comfier and cozier. And I hope you found this helpful. I'd love to see what you're working on. If anyone finishes a project like this, I'd love to see it. And I look forward to seeing you here next time on Ambient 3D Animations. We'll keep 3D modeling objects for the library we're working on. And if you'd like to be notified when the next episode comes out, or you find this helpful, please hit like and subscribe. If you hit the bell, you'll be notified when the next episode comes out. And thank you so much for taking the time to 3D model with me. I'll see you here next time.